Hello, my name is Chris Allaun, and I am very glad to be here for our Moon Books live chat and questions. Today, of course, it's me. I have lots of things to talk about with the other world and my new book and things like that. But I would love for you guys to just ask me questions just as they come. Please interrupt me. I want to be interrupted. So ask me anything. I'm happy to talk about my current books or my previous books or my classes or just me in general and my life here in Chicago and all those things. So I know that we have a lot of people who are watching in the UK and a whole lot of people who are watching in the US and everywhere else, and I'm very excited for all of that. Very international. It's very fun. But for those of us who are here in the U.S., it's about 1 p.m. here in Chicago, so it's in the afternoon. So the one blessing of COVID is that for those of us who are working at home, we can do things like this in the middle of the day. And for those of you in the UK and Europe and things like that, good evening. I kind of have to like change my frame of reference in mind to think, okay, I'm in the daytime, but other people are seeing me at night. So it's very cool. Anyway, so I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm very excited to have you guys here. I'm just going to adjust my camera. I'm never happy with the camera. I'm always playing and adjusting it and everything like that. So yeah, today we're going to talk about my new book that's coming out Friday. Otherworld, Ecstatic Witchcraft for the Spirits of the Land. So I do want to say, so the new book, which I have right here, let me angle it to the camera, Otherworld, Ecstatic Witchcraft for the Spirits of the Land. So in the UK, both Kindle and paperback are coming out Friday for November 27th. I'm very excited. In the US, it's a little bit different because, here in the US, we always have to be a little different. The Kindle is coming out on Friday the 27th, but the paperback is going to be out on December 1st. I had to write that down because I knew I would never remember which is which and things like that. But anyway, so I want to get into the other world and talking about that and things like that. So, so the first thing is that why on earth did I want to write about the other world? Why is it important? Why on earth would people even publish a book like that? So, one of the things that when I wrote the book, it was very much a subject I don't see written or books about the other world very often. I see a few, and a lot of them, to be honest, are academic. And I actually use a lot of those references in the book. But I wanted to talk about something that was, as pagans, as witches, as shamans, as magical people, that we should have a better understanding of the other world, because those of you guys who follow me, I do a lot with shamanism and like ecstatic witchcraft. And for those of you who don't know what ecstatic witchcraft is, or just being ecstatic, it's basically, think of like going into a trance, dancing, astral projection, journeying, spirit contact, and having a very physical, visceral experience while going into trance. I always think of ecstatic magic or ecstatic witchcraft as you think of the shaman or the witch dancing and drumming and shaking and going into a trance and speaking with the spirits and things like that. But the other world is part of the shamanic landscape. So in core shamanism, or what we call neo-shamanism, we have the three worlds. So we have the upper world, the underworld, and the mid-world. The reason I chose to focus more on the idea of the other world and not so much the mid-world, because the other world is just a very archaic word for the spirit world, or the astral world, or the worlds where other energies are, and other beings like the fairies, the elves, dragon energies, nature spirits, animal spirits, things like that. It is important to have a dialogue with these energies, with these beings, because they will help your magic. They will help your magic and your healing. A lot of the techniques in the book that I talk about are I talk about like spellcraft and sorcery, absolutely, but I also talk about the healing aspect. One of my favorite things I talk about is like Elvish healing and things like that, because I teach you in the book how to go into a trance, how to do a shamanic journey, and establish relationships with the fairies and elves, and find a healing teacher to teach you the Elvish and fairy healing. One of those things you see and hear about, and you hear stories about, but not so much of how to make that happen. Like, I want an Elvish healing teacher. How do I make that happen? Well, I'm going to show you in the book and things like that. One of the other things that I really wanted to do with Otherworld is, if you read the Old testimonials at the witch trials, or the lore, or the mythology of witchcraft, especially in England and in northern European countries, is you're always hearing the stories about the witches who had fairy familiars, or animal spirit familiars, about journeying to the Sabbath, and having like ferrets and spiders and mice as animal helpers and things like that, and working with the spirits of trees and the herbs and things. And so that is the type of magic and witchcraft I wanted to talk about in the book, and that I really haven't talked about so much before. So I'm excited about to talk about it now, and things like that. If you see me glancing over, I have my notes here about what I want to talk about. So I'm like, okay, let's just be discreet, but I guess that bonus. So why me? Why do I talk about it? It's interesting because I'm giving myself an interview. I already had these questions I wanted to talk about, so I wanted to just go over these questions. Anyway, why me? Why do I feel like I am able to talk about this magic, this type of witchcraft, sorcery, shamanism? It's actually been a part of my spiritual training for over 20 years. I mean, granted, I've been involved in the occult and magic and witchcraft since about 1992. But I got formal training in the year 2001. And the kind of witchcraft that I was trained in, because I was also initiated in traditional witchcraft, and how I was taught about it, and it was very ecstatic. That's why that's why I call the book that. But it was very hands-on, and it was very put your hands in the dirt and get dirty and get wet and be cold, and just have the experience of the mysteries and working with the deep energies of the forest, the hills, the mountains, the sea, the sky, all those things. And you know, I've seen a lot of different traditional witchcraft sects. It's kind of like, you know how there's a lot of different types of magic and Wicca. Like, so for example, you have the Golden Dawn, you have the OTO, you have a Gardnerian witchcraft, you have Alexandrian witchcraft, you have uh, a fairy and things like that, but they're all under the umbrella of Wicca, Kingdom and Own Brotherhood, stuff like that. In traditional witchcraft, kind of the same thing. You have, you know, some of the areas that are more focused on sabbatic crafts. So like Andrew Chumbley, you have stuff that's core Arthurian. So a lot of tradecraft, you'll see things about, you know, Otherworld, castles and grails and things like that. And in some traditional witchcraft, craft is a little bit more shamanism, you know, and that's the kind of traditional craft that I do, that I was trained in, and that I train my students in. Because, you know, my very first teacher, Matthew Allen Wood, he actually, he was a Druid at the time, and he would teach us that a powerful magician, witch, shaman, whatever, should be able to go into the forest, no tools, no athame, no cauldrons, and with their own heart and embody in spirit, connect with the energies of the earth, connect with the energies of the stars, can do powerful magic. So that's how also I wanted to write the book and just present it in that such a way. But again, I really enjoyed the ecstatic hands-on experience. And part of it is, like, for example, I have a whole chapter of trance and dance, and that's a kind of a prelude to the next chapter of shaking in a swing satyrs. So the type that was popularized by Jan Fries, and it's a type of sorcery and magic and healing that he used through moving, through a physical movements, through breath work, through dance and things like that. And the reason I gravitate towards that a lot is, first and foremost, those of you who have had conversations with me or heard me talk, or even today, you'll notice that I have a stutter and things like that. And so when I was a child, it was a lot worse, like a lot worse. But so when I was young, it was more about the physical body versus speaking. So communicating or performing art through dance, you know, because I remember I used to have a music teacher in grade school who was just like, oh, you stutter, so therefore you probably can't sing. And so because of that, and we know that's not true, of course, but because of that, I focused more on dance as a kid. And plus, you know, I was just having this conversation the other day as a gay man. One of our safe spaces, one of our community spaces is dance floors and dancing, because it's artistic expression and music and so forth, and so it's a safe place for us. So keeping all these things in mind about physical movement and physical, the drawing of energies through breath and through visualization, I did a whole lot of the trance work, you know, and I think it's a very powerful dynamic. I think it's a very visceral. You'll hear me say words like physical, visceral a lot, because one of the things I wanted to focus on in the Otherworld magical styles, because we're talking about the spirits of the earth, I wanted to have a very earthy physical technique of trance and magic. So that's how come we have the dance in there. But so back to what I was saying, you know, a lot of a beginner how-to books, how to do magic, how to do witchcraft and spells, they would always say like, raise energy, raise energy. You know, and you can do that by singing, chanting, or dancing. And can I remember picking up a how-to book of witchcraft back in like 1990 something or other, and it would say, oh, you can raise energy through dance. And I understood that concept, I understood what that meant, but I at the time I had a hard time connecting. How do you focus on your desire, your goal, your manifestation, have dance and connect that to the actual magical operation? And it never made sense, because at the time they never explained it correctly to me. It was always like a big mystery. So I remember like thinking, oh, I have a spell to do, I have a goal, like say for example a new job, and I would think about dancing and the new job, and then what do I do? And so it always kind of fell flat. And then after having like training with teachers, and also training with the spirits as well, and having that direct experience, it made more sense, and about how to use trance and dance, how to use shaking and swaying, how to have a physical expression and of a magic to attain your goal. One of the things I'm very cognizant of, that I want to talk about briefly, is I am very cognizant that the chapters on dancing and trance and say there and things like that are very ableist. I'm very aware of that, and I do have a special needs again, FU, and you know, being a stutterer in the speech department growing up, it was always right next to the special education students, and so I learned to have a love for people who think differently, who are differently abled. And so I am aware that the book is written from the point of view of an ableist. One of the things I will say is that all the trance techniques, even the dance techniques, the say their techniques, any of the shaking and swaying and the magic, can be done by people who are differently abled. So I'm happy to like help people, or to help modify any technique that fits with somebody who's differently able. And please, I want you to feel free, like you can contact me on my Facebook page. It's Chris Allaun, Allaun, author, teacher, healer. And if you join my page and you can message me and say, hey, can you help me modify one of your magical techniques or spells, or your ecstatic techniques, or whatever, I'm very happy to help you out in that regard. So I am aware it is a written through an ableist point of view, but just like I said, I'm happy to modify and help you as you need. All right, so that being said, one of the things that I think people raise eyebrows about in this book and things is I have a whole chapter dedicated to dragon magic and things. And I wanted to spend some time for talking a little bit about dragon magic, what it is and what it isn't, and why it's important. So the first thing is that again, the dragon magic that I put in the book is written from the point of view of an ecstatic witch who works with the energies of the land. So in in traditional witchcraft, we talk about something that's called the serpentine energies of the land. So think of them as ley lines, and when you look at the earth energy streams or the earth energy channels through a psychic lens or through your psychic, through clairvoyance, they kind of look like serpents, and they run like serpents and things. And so to the ancient shamans and witches and things, they resembled a giant snake or a giant dragon in the land. So because we're concerned with the energies of the land, the powers of the land, and things like that, I wanted to work with the serpentine powers of the land that we call dragons. So with all things that are witchcraft and magical, we like to give energies personification. So like, for example, we believe that the ley lines or the serpentine energies are not just a flow of energy or an energy channel. It's a living spiritual being that you can contact. And however, one of the things that people have a misnomer about, there's actually two misnomers, and they're very polarized. One misnomer is that no, dragons hate us and they will hurt us and kill us, and they don't want to have anything to do with us. That's a misnomer. And part of the reason is folklore, the dragons who come from the air and with their breath of fire destroy the castle and eat the knights, things like that. The other misnomer is the exact opposite. So there's this whole thing about how, oh, dragons are like angelic beings, and if you call to them, they're very glad to help you in your magic. In my experience and my training, and you can also with my dialogues with people who actually practice a traditional dragon magic, that's really not the lore. That's not it's not the energies. I think what a lot of times some people do is they'll take a concept like angelic beings, spirit guides, and then superimpose the shape of a dragon on top of it and say, oh, well, I have a dragon spirit guide, or I have a guardian dragon angel. And that's really not the case, because I think it's a very unfair to do to dragons. I think it's unfair to do to those other energies. The reason is that would be like me showing up to you saying, hi, I'm Chris, and you're like, no, you're George. No, I'm Chris. Nope, I like George better. You're superimposing a different personality on me, and that's not fair. So we have to be mindful about doing that, not just to dragons, but to all spirits, all energies, and so forth. So how do we get to know that? How do we work with the dragons? I give, not to sound like a commercial, but I do give a step-by-step techniques about how to go into a trance, how to work with the dragon energies, how to establish relationships with them, and how to gain their trust. I think that's very important. Let's see here. What's on my list? So, talking more about the other world, one of the things that I like to talk about, either indirectly or directly in my books, is about having a relationship with spirits. And I think that's very important because, again, I would read like old grimoires or about the energies of the angels, planets, and gods, ancestors, and so forth. And it always seemed to fall flat, because it would say like, and this was in my 20s before I got training, they'd say, okay, say this chant or say these words and call to a spirit. And then what? What do you do? Is it going to come? Do I even know if it's even here or not? What's going on? Are they doing what I asked? I don't know. Well, one of the things that we have to really take in consideration is that you're not going to have magical results with any spirit, any god, any entity, unless you have a relationship with them. In my previous book, Otherworld, I have a chapter on the gods, and I talk about before you can invoke the gods, or before I feel comfortable asking the gods for anything, you have to have a relationship with them. You have to have a sacred altar to them. You have to do devotions and meditations and conversations, and then you can ask them for something. And the idea behind that is if you have an acquaintance who you don't really go and don't really talk to, and if you say, hey George, use that name George again, hey George, I need a new house. George is going to be like, I don't really know you well, and you have to get you a house. It's kind of weird and frankly awkward. However, if you decide to get to know George and you understand his likes, his dislikes, his personality, you give him gifts on occasions. Like he likes, I don't know, he likes video games, and you're like, here's a video game. Then if you say, hey George, can you help me buy a house? George is going to say, if we have a very strong relationship and a good friendship, I'm happy to help you find a house or to buy a house. You see the difference? How we have to have a relationship with them. We have to make sure that we're having these energies and having these conversations, so how do you have relationships with all these things? How do you have relationships, and who are we having a relationship with? So the relationships that we're having with are beings of the other world, So who's in the other world? Well, there's we have the fairies, we have the elves, we have the dragons, we have the nature spirits, we have for the animal spirits, we have animal helper spirits, we have tree spirits, river spirits, sky spirits, tons and tons and tons. So then these are the beings you want to have a relationship with, and to do that, I don't suggest you try to have a relationship with everybody at the same time. That's like going to a party and trying to be best friends with every single person there is. It's a lot. I think the important thing is that at least for me, I need to have a relationship with the fairies, the elves, the dragons, the nature spirits, and the animal spirits. Start there. And once you establish these relationships, it becomes a lot easier, I think, especially when you do the work and give the offerings and do the devotions and things like that. Because, for example, if I were to decide to have a relationship with spirits or with for nature spirits, that's what I mean. I might go out to the park or forest, and I live in Chicago, so I understand, and I live in this city, so I understand when people are like, well, I don't live by the countryside. Do the best you can. If you can find a park, or you can find any plant life. I'm actually very blessed here in Chicago because we have forest preserve, we have huge parks, we have a giant lake, and so forth. But anyway, find a place in nature and begin your connections there. Begin your relationships there. And again, I teach you how to do all those things in the book. And I simplify things. I don't, how I write magical techniques is I try to imagine that the reader is a person who has some experience, but at the same time, really wants to know the ins and outs of how things work and operate. So when I give you a trance technique or a magical technique or a spell technique, I'm not just, we're going to say, do a spell, because I hate that. Because you're like, what am I doing? Well, I teach you how to do the breath work, how to do the movements, what to think about. I give you a few ideas of the things to say and things like that. So I don't leave you hanging. I make sure that you are hopefully well prepared. And if not, you're like, Chris, I'm confused. Feel free to message me on Facebook. I'm always happy to hear from people. So anyway, so what else? So what else is a strange thing? Well, let's talk about the other world itself. So what can we do in the other world besides speak to fairies and dragons and things? Well, the other world is very vast. It's very, 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 very vast. And if you remember some of the fairy tales and folklore and mythologies, there's fairy castles, and there's otherworldly animals and beasts and places of healing, and there's spirits who are there who are going to help you. Some may trick you. Some may lead you astray because that's just part of the other world, or some may teach you a very powerful healing or a powerful magical technique. One of the things I love about the other world is that it is very mysterious and different and weird and fun, and it's interesting. It's everything a magical person of which could ever want, you know. The other thing about the other world that I really enjoy is that it's, so the physical world, I think, is a magical place. You know, even though it's the mundane world, we have lots of spirits here, lots of energies. But the other world is even more so magical and even has more magic and weird things and things to explore. Which leads me into a little bit about fairies and things like that about the other world. So a couple things, and people may disagree with me, and everything that I teach through, I do a lot of research because I love these topics, and so I read and research, and I enjoy it. It's a whole lot of fun. But it's also through a personal experience, and some people call it UPG, which is fine, I guess. But I would say this isn't my experience. And when I share experience, I don't say this is the truth. This is the only truth. What I say is, through my experience, I have found blank. And I do that because I am very aware that through your experience, you may find the exact opposite, and that's fine. In fact, it's beautiful. Like when people say, "Hey, Chris, I tried your technique and I found the opposite result." Great, let's talk about that. Let's explore that. Let's have fun with it and see what happens. But anyway, so you know, I want to talk about really quickly about fairies and things like that. Fairies and elves are very similar. You know, I remember asking my teachers, what's the difference between the elves and the fairies? Not a whole lot. A few things. I have found through my research and experience, both through books and having conversations with them, that a lot of the differences are regional. They look the same. They tend to dress how the locals dress. So, for example, fairies have a more Celtic slant, so they would dress like the Celts. Elves would have a more Northern European slant, so they would dress like the Northern Europeans. Another thing that I found is, and this is in the lore, um, elves tend to are a little bit more friendly towards some humans than fairies are. And the thing I noticed that a lot of people say, oh, the fairies don't like us, they don't trust us. Well, you destroyed the forest and the earth, so of course they're not going to trust us. But what I have found, at least again through my own experience, is that if you have an open heart, and to me, you know how the fairy tales say, oh, they were pure of heart. I don't think that's a virginal thing, or you've never done anything bad or said the wrong thing or whatever. I think that means you have an open heart to them. That's what I think it means, but other people may disagree. So anyway, I think if you have an open heart and you generally want to learn and establish those relationships, the fairies are going to respond. However, I will say sometimes it takes a little while. I was thinking about if you are trying to get the attention of a bird, or get the attention of a fox, or get the attention of a hare, you wouldn't just walk into it. And yes, I specifically chose those animals for a reason. Those are usually animals that are associated with fairies. But anyway, he wouldn't just go right up to them because they don't trust us and they're going to run away. But if you leave offerings and speak to them and meditate with them and have a relationship with them, then they're more likely to let you come up to them. So that's my analogy about that. Another thing in the book that I really want to talk about, excuse me, my eye. I want to talk about that's in the book of shape-shifting, and that seems to be such a controversial subject. And if you've read any of my previous books, I do not shy away from magical controversy. Part of it is I hate gatekeeping. I hate everything about gatekeeping. I think there's a big difference between waiting till a student is magically and spiritually ready for a technique, because of course, if I give the analogy of, if you're a beginner, I'm not going to teach you how to summon a demon. I'm just not going to do it, because you probably don't even have the magical power to be able to do that. But even if you're able to summon them, could you handle the situation? Could you handle if they fought back? Could you handle if something went wrong? So that isn't gatekeeping. That's being a good teacher and evaluating a student's progress. Gatekeeping, to me, is where it usually happens of a basic information in telling people or telling students, oh, I'm very powerful, and you're not as powerful as I am, and I can't possibly teach you this ancient technique that will harm you because, oh, it's just so powerful. That's ego, and that bothers me. But so I am not afraid of teaching techniques. The only thing I will say is, especially if you don't already have a teacher, I'm a firm believer, find a teacher. Find a teacher. We can do Zoom, we can do a Facebook video, all types of things. So you don't even have to have a teacher that's in your area. You can find one online. That being said, if you don't have a teacher, which is okay, some people prefer to learn on their own, really read the techniques, understand the techniques, practice and things like that. And if you have magical friends, work in a group, work together, get different perspectives. But I want to talk about shape-shifting real quick. So shape-shifting, I had someone comment on my page, why are you teaching people lies? Oh, lies. And he said, people can't turn into animals. And if you read the book, you actually will see in the book that I never say that. I never say that you can physically shapeshift. If you can video that, because I would love to see it, and not be because I don't believe you, it's just because I want to see it. But there's and I don't want to give too much away, but there's different aspects of shapeshifting. There's mental shapeshifting, there's astral shapeshifting, and there's etheric shapeshifting. Like mental shapeshifting, I'll give you a little piece of information that's in the book. Mental shapeshifting is when, say in meditation, you're trying to understand what, say, a fox is like. We're not a fox. We don't have the mentality. If we weren't born a fox, we are not a fox. The closest we can ever get is if we imagine what it's like to be a fox and to have those fox experiences and eat the things that fox eats and so forth. He can imagine it in hopes that we have a little teeny glimpse of what a fox goes through. So that's mental. And there's astral, to where you're on a shamanic journey and you actually shapeshift. And then there's etheric shapeshifting, which I go through in the book. But each of those things I think are very powerful. They teach you about the animal kingdom. They teach you how to connect with your animal brain. In layman's terms, we have three parts of the brains. We have the reptilian brain, we have the animal brain, and the cerebral brain is what makes us human. Interesting fact, dolphins also have a cerebral brain. So to be honest, I think dolphins are smarter than us. They're still having a good time in the sea and they're not hurting anybody, so they're way smarter than us. But anyway, so when you're able to connect with your animal brain, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of magic, there's a lot of witchcraft there. So like this whole book is a very much a love letter to the a pre-modern witchcraft. So think about shape-shifting and dragons and having fairy guides and magical spells with the nature spirits, and going into a trance and flying through the Sabbath, and all the things I said at the beginning. Let's see here. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything. The book will be out. I know I have a few minutes here, so I can talk about almost anything. So the question is, do you think the other world, particularly the fairy world, once ran in sync with our world, rather than being a separate place? Absolutely, I really do. I think that, and I think it still does a little bit run in sync. In fact, I talk about the very same thing on the chapter of the other world and the fairy worlds, which is the same thing. Other worlds, fairy world, same thing. I think that they were very close to us because we were closer to nature. We hunted off the land. We lived off the land. We had a special relationship with the land. But I think as he became more civilized, and I put that in air quotes because, I mean, what does that even mean, civilized? I think people wanted to mean going away from our animal nature, and I don't think that that's healthy for us. I think we need to embrace our animal nature. It doesn't mean we need to hurt people or fight. It just means that we need to be in tune with our physical body, our emotional body, our spiritual bodies, things like that. But anyway, I think that energy, if you if you remember the occult teachings of how the energy from the spirit world gets to the physical world, energy goes through the spiritual plane, then the mental plane, then the astral plane, and the etheric, and then the physical plane. So I feel that the other world, or the fairy world, is a combination between the astral and the etheric, so very close to us. So we, of course, are physical, and in some regards, the etheric. So there's this crossover in the etheric. It's more than a liminal place. I don't think the other world is just an in-between place. I think it's a place that's right next to us, where the energy flows through the spiritual, flows through the astral, into the other worlds. And the other world is a conduit. Get this. It's a conduit for the spiritual, astral energy to flow to the physical plane. So if you're ever in a wild place, so like a nature preserve, a park or forest, the mountains, the ocean, the canyons, or whatever, if you're in a wild place that doesn't have a lot of people and a lot of civilization, the other world spirits are very strong. You can feel it, like it's very tangible to me. If you're in a civilized place of the city, and people and trains and cars, you don't really feel them. So I think that when we have industrial and homes and things like that, and wherever we've destroyed the earth and destroyed the land, it cuts off the flow from the other world to us. It cuts off that flow. So that's why when I know all you magical people out there, you've done this. You've gone to a place in nature, and like, I can feel the nature spirits. I feel like I'm being watched by the fae or the elves. I feel the energies under my feet, right? Because the flow from the other world is strong. In downtown Chicago or New York or London or wherever, I don't feel it as much. I think if you have a strong intuition and you have strong clairvoyance, you can feel it, but it takes a lot of energy to feel it, because you have to go through all that concrete. But if you're in the forest or the ocean, I have a lake here in Chicago. I'm sure you all know it's right by Lake Michigan, and you can just feel the energy. And like today, it's very foggy, and the fog is coming off the lake, and you can just feel the spirits. It's awesome. But anyway, that's my question for that. If you have any other questions, just let me know. I'm happy to answer them. One of the things I want to leave you guys with is the whole book, and I keep showing the book. I know you know what it looks like, but it's a habit. I'm like, look. So I used the book because I wanted to present witchcraft and magic and shamanism in a way that takes you back to the ancient forest. And I wanted through the whole thing to paint a picture of going into the deep forests or the desert or the mountains. I keep saying that because you can go wherever in nature and really feel the pulse of the land and smell the trees and feel the mist coming from the deep forest, and hearing the animals in in the background, in having our brains, having our minds, having our hearts go back to a place of our primal self, our animal self, so that we can open up our heart and really reach out to the fairies, reach out to the elves, reach out to the nature spirits, and have a relationship with them so that we can do magic, do healing, and to be honest, rekindle that sacred relationship, that kindred spirit with the nature spirits, with the elves, with the fairies. Because I think when we do that, through the powers of witches, of shamans, through nature spirits, we're all combining our magic together, we can really heal the earth. We can really make change. We can really spiritually evolve. And to be honest, I think part of spiritually evolving is going back to our little bit of our primal self. So I think a truly evolved being, evolved human being, is able to really tap into their primal animal self, but at the same time spiritually evolving and being one with the gods. So it's kind of like being a god who's able to really understand nature. And it's interesting because if you're a mythology buff like I am, there's a lot of stories about the gods, and the Egyptian gods, for one, who was really, they were divine, but they really had a connection to the animal self. Celtic deities, the Welsh deities, the Irish deities, the heathen deities, they really had a connection to nature and things. If there's no more questions, I will like to thank everyone for tuning in, for being here, and again, this book, the Otherworld: Ecstatic Witchcraft for the Spirit of the Land, which is my first book with this publisher, but it's my fourth book altogether. It comes out Friday in the UK and on Kindle here in the US. And in the US, it comes out December 1st. I'm very excited. I can't wait to hear your feedback. And I will speak with you soon. Again, like my page on Facebook, Chris Allaun, author, teacher, healer. I'm also found on Twitter. Again, Chris Allaun. And I'm also found on Instagram. Instagram is more, to be honest, me taking fun pictures of magical things, personal things, wacky things. And so if you really want to get to know a more personal side of me and who I am, then join my Instagram page, and I'll take all kinds of pictures and of me jogging down the street or me doing a spell. With me, you never know. Just that time. I'm a Gemini, so beware. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything, and we will see you soon.